Okay, today we're learning about formatting titles. When do we use quotation marks or when do we use italics? When do we italicize a title? So I'm going to be very specific about what I want you to write down here. This will help me know who's really listening to these videos and who's just fast forwarding through. So please only write down what I tell you to. That's what I will be checking for. Okay, so when we look here, again, don't write anything down until I tell you what to write down. I just want you to listen. Larger works are italicized. So larger works are things that have smaller things in them. For instance, a book has chapters. So the larger work is the book. The book could have chapters or it could be a book of short stories. That means the book itself is the bigger thing that contains the smaller thing. So the bigger thing is italicized. Books of poetry are italicized. Now, if you want to reference a chapter out of that book, that's going to have quotation marks because the smaller works have quotation marks. If you're going to reference a short story or a flash fiction piece or one poem, that is put in quotation marks, even though it is taken out of a book. Same with music. A record, a CD, an album, those are all italicized. If you're referencing a specific song inside of that, album or CD or record, then that is put in quotation marks. And finally, the other big category would be like newspapers and magazines. The newspaper or the title of the magazine itself would be italicized because it contains a lot of smaller things such as articles. And then the article would have quotation marks. So I do want you to write this slide and only this slide down. So pause it and go ahead and write this down. And then when you're finished, put a smiley face at the bottom of the page. Now, I do want you to continue listening after this because I'm going to give you some examples, but you don't need to write those examples down. All right, so the larger works are italicized. Flash fiction, 72 very short stories. This is the name of a book, of a flash fiction, a book that contains 72 flash fiction stories. If you were going to pull one of them out of there, such as Early Autumn, you'd put it in quotation marks. The crossover is a novel in verse, a novel of poetry that we are going to be reading together. And you can see, because it's a novel, a book, it is italicized. The bet part two is one poem out of there in quotes. Now, look, this is confusing because I have Thriller both ways. Well, Michael Jackson's album Thriller also had a song named Thriller. So this is part of the reason why we do this, right? As sort of a rule, because then you would know whether you're talking about the album, which is italicized, or the individual song, which has quotes around it. And then the New York Times is a newspaper, and this is an article outside of it. I always ask myself, can this be put into something bigger? Like, can a short story be a part of a book? If it's something smaller that can be put into something bigger, the smaller thing is quotations. Okay, that's it. But again, you do not need to write these down. This is just to give you an example. And once you finish the video, put a smiley face at the bottom.